Hey, it's Matt Powers again, Baker Creek, and this is part two of how to know what to grow. And this morning we talked about how to figure out what your climate analog was so that you would know what other sites all over the globe that you had overlap with so that you could know, hey, I can grow what they're growing. And then you would sample their stuff and then you would mix all the different climate analogs and make this whole new diversity in your area. So that's what we talked about first. So now I want to talk about seed and soil and, well, let's just talk about seed first, seed saving. So where I lived in Central Valley, California in the Sierra Nevada foothills, it was 140 degrees when it was 112 out in the soils. So when it was 112 outside, it was 140 in the soils when it was bare and uncovered because the dark color absorbs the heat, right? So we had like a huge issue growing in where it was actually watered twice a day. It was 120 degrees in the soil. Where it was mulched, it was 40 degrees cooler. Yeah. So mulch is really, really critically important for temperature. I've got a video out and that shows that whole thing with the temperature differential with the thermometer live. But today I'm really going to talk about seed saving. And when I started seed saving, and I was inspired to start seed saving in specific by Jared Gettle. It was Baker Creek and Jared Gettle's example and his books and stuff that actually got me started seed saving originally. I think 9 years ago. Yeah, so, right. When I originally started growing food, I noticed something very dramatic, that certain things would just bolt. They wouldn't grow. And so I was like, oh, something's wrong with my soil. Oh, there's something wrong with my seed. Because I didn't know, right? I didn't know what was going on. So what I did once I started learning about seed saving, started learning about adaptation, was my white carrots that bolted, I let go to seed. And I let it create hundreds of seeds. And then it go to seed all over and spread, and I let that do it twice, and within 2 seasons it went from bolting instantly to forming good roots. And these were the white carrots that were traditionally used as feed, so they're supposed to get huge, you know what I mean? Obviously things get in different climates, get different sizes. Jared Gettle's garden here, I mean, he's getting beets this big sometimes. I'm getting beets like, my biggest beets are like this, and that seems normal to everyone, but some areas get giant food, you know what I mean, because they have a lot of organic matter in the soil. So, yeah, the carrots, it took seed saving to get the carrots to adapt to that area so that it would get to size and it wouldn't bolt early, you know. And that just takes time and seed saving, or just planting it and letting the seeds do their work and the plant just do its thing and spread. And obviously if you have Queen's Anne's lace, that would cross with that and shrink your carrots. So be aware of things like that so that you don't have a reversal of fortune. Cherokee Trail of Tears, the black bean. This is an incredible story. This is a black bean that survived the incredible journey that the Cherokee people took when they were removed from their land from the south and forced to march in winter. And very few of their things survived that journey, and very few of their people did too. And so these seeds are survivors, right? They come from survivors, and they're incredible seeds, incredible heirloom, and they're my favorite bean. They are the most productive. When I first started growing them, though, half of them were brown, and it wasn't like a healthy brown. It was an unhealthy brown, and I didn't understand why. And I just started saving the black ones and composting the brown ones. And what happened was that the pods started getting longer, and the seeds started getting bigger, and they started like packing in, and they started packing in so tight they started squaring, because they would press against each other, and the ends literally would start squaring. And so I started getting like square beans. So they're so packed so tight, you know. And they're all black and shiny and beautiful and full. And I would have less and less like off type beans and less lower quality beans. And so through selection, and the first thing was just seed saving. So black beans, it was the selection of seed that helped and what got my plants to improve. And this takes years in some places, especially in harsh climates. It takes years. But it's amazing. And it's so crazy because you can see it happen so rapidly. You can see the genetic changes happening, and you're like, I am doing this with you. We're doing it together, you know. Pretty amazing. So, all right, the next thing is a horizontal. That's new to the rareseeds.com website, and it'll be in next year's catalog. It's red Aztec spinach. And I heard about it from Carol Depp, the Resilient Gardener. Her book's The Resilient Gardener. And it was in Eat All Green she talked about, where she would harvest it young and eat the whole thing, the stems, the leaves, the branches, everything. And when it gets a little bit bigger, you can take the seed heads and fry them, which is the traditional way to eat it. And so I kind of reasoned, I thought to myself, you know, if Native Americans were growing this, then they weren't carrying water to water it. So this was dry farmed. And I tested it. And it worked really well. And what was the craziest part about this was I sowed it on bare ground, and it took off, and it went green, right, with the last final rain at the end of the winter. 3 months later, it's still setting seeds. I don't know where it was getting, you know, I think it was the morning dew. It's the morning moisture. It's the temperature differential between the plant and the ground and the air allowed it to condense water and kept it going like that. But still, nonetheless, by studying the history of this plant, I understood that it was probably dry farmed or at least not irrigated. And so I started throw sowing it. I threw the seed, I didn't plant it, right? I throw sowed it, I let it compete with itself, so it was packed really tightly together, which is a bio-intensive kind of thing. And the best producers produced seed. They got like a foot taller than everyone else. Most of the plants burned because it was 140 degrees in the soil right there. But I got seed off of a dry farm plant that is grain that's edible. It had leaves on it earlier in the season that I could have eaten. I was just observing this time around. But it's a dry farmed, edible plant that grows in 140 degree soil. So horizontal is a new thing. It's actually my seed. It was my first thing. It was my first seed that I've ever sold to Baker Creek or anyone really. So that was like an incredible thing. And it's the same exact seed I harvested. I dry farmed the same seed that you guys are getting. So it's the same exact genetics as I dealt with. It's not the dry farmed seed. I've got that separate, and there's not very much of it. So I'm gonna promote that and get that going. And maybe we'll have some special dry farm seed at some point. And then, all right, so the final thing I want to talk about. Okay, so if you guys know about the Explorer series, Baker Creek they have their members of their staff go out into the world and engage in the culture and go and meet new farmers and all over the world and talk to them, learn about their culture, learn about their food, and taste their food, save seeds with them, and bring seeds home that they think that we would like. And one of the things that came to their catalog that caught my eye, this was probably a year and a half ago, and you've probably all seen it too, the Peruvian corn. It's highland valley corn, so it's way up high in the Andes, but then it's these valleys. So they're microclimates at a high elevation, and they're actually photoperiodic. So what that means is they require less than 12 hours of sunlight. And that photoperiodic thing can change. Some things need less light, some things need more light, but that just means that there's a specific amount of light, light, that they need per day. That's the period of time that they need. And people like Stephen Smith, the corn guru, is working on these corns. I'm working on these corns. And what I did with this was, it was placement and a few other things. So first, I understood that the corn needed a really long growing season. And so I live in an area I lived in an area. The area here is a great growing season too. But in California, we had a year-round growing season basically. And for corn, we planted in May and harvested in December. Right, that was the first season of adaptation. It took a lot. It took a lot of time. And it started getting moist at the end of the season, and I started losing things to fungus, and I actually cut them and brought them indoors and hung them upside down, the whole plant. So I had like 12 plants at that point. I think I have about 30 this year that we just put upside down, and then they hang dry. And so all the energy still in the plant, all that green, you know what I mean, all that you know, that nitrogen, the enzymes, the sugars, all that's still flowing downward into the corn. And that's an old technique. That's not something I invented or anything. That I've studied that. So I finished the corn that way, and that's how I originally got Peruvian corn to dry down in the season. Where I planted it was actually kind of special, because remember, we have a lot of light in California, and it needs less light. Steven solved this issue by growing it in winter in a greenhouse where there's not a lot of light because it's winter, and the plants just did fine. So they didn't grow very tall. They're shrinking because of the light issue, and probably because they're inside a greenhouse, right? Mine don't seem to be shrinking because I'm training them to more light. They seem to be growing taller and maybe getting bigger kernels. It's only year 2, so it's hard to say definitively, but the kernels for what I've harvested this year already are bigger than the original Peruvian kernels, which were already huge. So it's really kind of crazy, but what I did was, alright, so I lived on this hill, so it was this hill, and then it was like a sundial. So the sun would come up and go like that, and then down. And so right here, tucked on the hill, on the dark side of the hill, I had my corn underneath an oak tree. So the sun would come up, and it would be like dappled shade, and then full sun for 4 hours only, and then dappled shade sunset. So what happened was I imitated the amount of energy they would get. I didn't imitate the exact light off and on kind of thing. So I reasoned that the light is a metric of energy, not a time period of energy. And it worked out in my favor. And so I was able, by shading my corn and putting them on the dark side of the hill, where you wouldn't put the garden, right? I was able to get this Peruvian corn, and it's epic. I mean, it's got unique patterns that we don't have in North America, and it's my second year growing it outside here in America, and I'm now this year going to adapt it to this coming year. I'm going to adapt it to the Midwest. So I'm going to broaden it further, and then we're going to try to scale up and get some Peruvian landrace corn with all. And then I also have plans to take the speckles off, because it's a jumping gene and readily jumps onto other corn. Take the jumping gene, the special purple speckles, and put them onto popcorn. Maybe we'll call it freckle corn or something like that, or speckly corn. But I've already got actually tons. If you guys follow me, I got tons of crazy corn that I'm working on like that. But the Peruvian thing is really, really good to understand, because if you have something that really doesn't like the light, you can do some really tricky things. For instance, this summer I grew my best cabbage ever. This summer. It's 110, right? Doesn't make sense. Shouldn't do that. Right? But the thing is, what I reasoned was it was the amount of light that it was getting. It was the energy that it was getting, rather than the actual temperature. So what I did was I planted under a 3-story canopy. I planted cabbage underneath my corn, my sorghum, my beans, and my squash. And I ended up getting full cabbage heads. They tasted wonderful. And I think it's because I reasoned that it was energy, not a time frame for the light. And that's, we'll work on that, and we'll try to prove that definitively. But the point is, with all of this, is that with seed saving, with observation, and applying what nature has shown us to be her behaviors, and that's what permaculture really is. Permaculture is seeing the world through nature's eyes. We can get more, technical with the definition and the ethics, but that's really what it is. And so by looking through nature's eyes, we can kind of start seeing the patterns, and then we can start testing them. And you will find that you can grow things that you never thought you could. I mean, I've tested probably 1,000 of the varieties that Baker Creek has to offer. Yeah, I went crazy for a number of years. My Christmas was Baker Creek seeds. So, and then on top of that, what happened was that my enthusiasm just kind of overflowed into my classrooms and my high schools. We started a garden in my high school, and Baker Creek sponsored it. This is all part of the story, you know, how I ended up. But yeah, so I've tried so many other things, and what I've discovered is it's really incredible. The seeds have so much more information in them than we give them credit. I know some people sometimes have crop failure, or these things happen. There's always something to learn from those events, either about our soil, or about the plant, or about our climate. Because there's so much information actually in these plants. We really don't understand fully. Even if we work with them for a number of years, we don't really understand fully what's possible. So where is he located? I'm currently located at Baker Creek in Missouri. I was located in the Central Valley of California at 6,000 feet at Coarse Gold, California, between Fresno and Yosemite. So I was where it was really hot, where all the fires were actually. My family's super happy to be here at Baker Creek. All right, well, it was so fun to share all that information with you all. I should have props next time to make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, there's an amazing amount of stuff you guys can do, and I just really want everyone to know that. And there's so much more to the catalog that you can be utilizing if you're seed saving. So I really encourage people to seed save, because you'll discover that your gardening can be so much more incredible than it is right now. Your diversity, your pantry, everything, your kitchen, your food, you know what I mean? Your fibers, you know, whatever it may be. It can be so much more diverse. And I hope that you guys get your free catalog, if you're getting your free catalog, or if you're getting your whole seed catalog, you get that soon. And I hope you start an abundance in your lives this year, and you embrace the diversity that is waiting, because it's waiting. And the stuff that's hard to do, you know, give it a chance, because you'll be surprised at what seeds and plants can do, and the amazing things that can happen. All right, happy Thanksgiving.